Year 4, Part 3. It was a mild day when Ray came home, a day full of the soft languor of early spring, when nature is still tired after her wrestle with winter. There had been a light, misty snowfall in the night, and Pat went for a walk to the secret field in the afternoon to see if she could win from it a little courage to face Ray's return. It was very lovely in those silent woods with their white-mossed trees. Every step she took revealed some new enchantment, as if some ambitious elfin artificer were striving to show just how much could be done with nothing but the white mystery of snow in hands that knew how to make use of it. Such a snowfall, thought Pat, was the finest test of beauty. Whenever there was any ugliness or distortion, it showed it mercilessly. But beauty and grace were added unto beauty and grace, even as unto him that hath shall be given more abundantly. She wished she had someone to enjoy the loveliness with her. Hilary, Suzanne, David, Ray. But Ray would be coming home in a few hours' time, artificially cordial, looking at her with bright, indifferent eyes. "I just can't bear it," thought Pat miserably. When Pat heard the jingle of sleigh bells coming up the lane in the dim, she fled to her room. Everyone else was in the kitchen waiting for Ray. Mother and Sid and Judy and Tilly Tuck and the cats. Pat felt she had no part or lot among them. It had turned colder. There was a thin green sky behind the snowy trees, and the silver gladness of an evening star over the birches. Pat heard the noise of laughter and greeting in the kitchen. Well, she supposed she must go down. There was a sound of flying feet on the stairs. Suddenly it seemed to Pat that there was no air in the room. Ray burst in. A rosy, radiant Ray, her eyes as blue as ever, her mouth like a kissed flower. She engulfed Pat in a fierce leopard-skin hug. "Patsy, darling, why weren't you down? Oh, but it's good to see you again." This was the old Ray. Pat was afraid she was going to howl. All at once life was beautiful again. It was as if she had wakened up from a horrible dream and seen a starlit sky. "Pat, haven't you a word to say to me? You aren't sore at me still, are you? Oh, I wouldn't blame you if you were. I was the world's prize idiot. I realized that very soon after we quarreled, but I was too proud to admit it, and you wrote me such icy, stiff letters while I was away." "Oh!" Pat began to laugh and cry at once. They got their arms around each other. Everything was all right, beautifully all right again. It was a wonderful evening. Everyone enjoyed Judy's superlative supper, with Ray feeding the cats tidbits, and Tilly Tuck and Judy outdoing themselves telling stories. Again and again, Ray's eyes met Pat's over the table in the old camaraderie. Even King William looked as if sometime he might really get across the Boyne. But the best of all came at bedtime, when they settled down for the old delight of talking things over, with Bold and Bad tensing and flexing his claws on Pat's bed, and Popka blinking goldenly on Ray's. "Isn't it jolly to be good sisters again?" exclaimed Ray. "I feel like that verse in the Bible where all the morning stars sang together. It's just been horrid, horrid. How could I have been such a little fool? I just wallowed in self-pity all the fall, and then it seemed as if that outburst had to come. And all over that creature. I'm so ashamed of ever dreaming I cared for him. I can't understand how I could have been so fantastic. And yet I really did have a terrible case. Of course, I knew perfectly well in my heart it could never come to anything. At the very worst of my infatuation, when I was trying to pretend to everyone I didn't care a speck, I knew no Silverbush girl could ever marry a go preacher, but that didn't prevent me from being crazy about him. It seemed so romantic, a hopeless love, you know, two found souls, forever sundered by family pride and all that, you know. I just reveled in it. I can see that now. The way he used to look at me across that barn. And once, when he read his text, "Behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thou hast dove's eyes." He looked right at me, and I nearly died of rapture. He really was in love with me then. You never saw the poem he wrote me, Pat. He was jealous of everything, it seemed. Of the wind that whispered in my ear. Of the sunshine that played on my hair. Of the moonbeam that lay on my pillow. The lines didn't scan very well, and the rhymes limped, but I thought it was a masterpiece. Can you wonder I was furious when you just stepped in and lifted him under my very nose? By the way, he's married. Did you know, Pat? Yes, I saw it in the paper. Oh, he sent me an announcement, giggled Ray. You should have seen it, with scrolls of forget-me-nots around the border. If I hadn't been cured before, that would have cured me. Pat, why is it written in the stars that girls have to make fools of themselves? We were both geese, said Pat. Let's blame it all on the moon, said Ray. They felt very near to each other, and then Judy came in with cups of delicious hot cocoa for them, and a little bite of Bishop's bread and a handful of raisins, as if they were children again. Just think, said Pat. To other people this day has been only Wednesday. To me, it's the day you came home. Home to me. Back into my life. It may be March still by the calendar, but it's April in my heart. April full of spring song. Here's to me having more sense in all the years to come, said Ray, waving her cup of cocoa. To our having more sense, corrected Pat. It's lovely to be home again, sighed Ray. I had a splendid time at Guelph, and I really did learn lots. Much more than just nature study. The social side was all right, too. There were some nice boys. We had a gorgeous trip to Niagara. But I am half inclined to agree with you that there is no place like Silverbush. It must do something to people who live in it. Those darling cats. I really haven't seen a decent cat since I left the island, Pat. No cat who looked as if he really enjoyed being a cat, you know. I wish we could do some crazy thing to celebrate. Sleep out in the moonlight or something like that. But it's too Marchy. So we must just have a good pie-jaw. Tell me everything that has happened since I went away. Your letters were so charitable. There was no kick in them. Let me tell you once for all, Pat, that a person who always speaks well of everyone is a most uninteresting correspondent. I'm sure you must be boiling over with gossip. Have there been any nice juicy scandals? Who has been born? Married? Engaged? Not you, I hope. Pat, don't go and get married to David. He's far too old for you, darling. He really is. Don't be silly, sweetheart. I just want David as a friend. The Dadlants, said Judy, happily as she went downstairs. I was knowing the good old gardener since would come out on top. It was wonderful to be too happy to sleep. The very sky through the window looked glad, and when Pat wakened, a verse she had heard David read a few days before, a verse which had hurt her at the time, but now seemed like a friend, came to her mind. Whomever wakens on a day, happy to know and be, to enjoy the air, to love his kind, to labor and be free, already his enraptured soul lives in eternity. She repeated the lines to herself as she stood by her window. Ray slipped out of bed and joined her. Judy was crossing the yard, carrying something for the comfort of her hens. Pat, said Ray a bit soberly, does it ever strike you that Judy is growing old? Don't, Pat winced. I don't want to think of anything to spoil this happy morning. But she did know that Judy was growing old, shut her eyes to it as she might. And hadn't Judy said to her rather solemnly one day, "Patsy darlin', there do be a night dress with a crochet yoke all ready in the top right-hand tail of me blue chist if I ever took ill sudden like." "Judy, don't you feel well?" Pat had cried in alarm. Oh, never be worrying, darlin'. I'm fit as a fiddle. Only I did be riding in the dead list of the paper this morning that old Maggie Patterson had died in Charlottetown. We were cronies when I did be coming to the island at first, and she do be only a year older than myself. So I just thought I'd mention the nightdress to you. The old lady in Castle MacDermot had one of lace and satin. She always put on when she had the doctor." "I'm so glad you and Ray are as you used to be, Pat," said Mother, when Pat took her breakfast into her. Pat looked at Mother. "I didn't think you knew we weren't," she said slowly. Mother smiled. "You can't hide such things from mothers, darling. We always know. And I think a little wise forgetfulness is indicated." Pat stopped and kissed her. "My precious dear, wasn't it lucky Father fell in love with you?" she breathed. Ray was in kinks in the hall when Pat went out. "Oh, Pat, life is worth living. I've just seen Judy making Tilly Tuck take a dose of castor oil. You'll never know what you've missed." Yes, life was worth living again. And now Pat felt she could throw herself into house-cleaning plans and spring renovating with a heart at leisure from itself. The days that had seemed so endless wouldn't be half long enough now for all she wanted to crowd into them.